Here we go. Okay, good morning and good morning to everybody watching us. This morning, this is the Japan Expert Insights podcast, and today we're going to talk with a guest who many people know, respect, and love to have and listen to. We've got Kei Izawa sensei. You have met him before, and the first thing I want to say to you, Kei sensei, is that, well, I'm very happy that you agreed to be on the podcast again, and welcome. Thank you very much for this. To everybody who joined us again, thank you very much for being with us on this Wednesday morning. Today we're going to talk about leadership, leadership across cultures, and of course, leadership across fields. Many of you already know Izawa Sensei, and you are aware that he is a long-term practitioner of Aikido and also a coach, if I can say this, yes, instructor, let's say chief instructor. He's currently a chief instructor in the Aikikai Tan Shinjuku in Colorado, but he also has a long and very rich career in business leadership. So, again, I would like to start with a few questions because many of you have probably already heard that Izawa Sensei is writing his second book at the moment, and it is about leadership. Of course, I would like to know what the background of that project is, and also a little bit more details about what is going on at the moment with the project.
Good morning in Japan, and good afternoon, good evening for people around the world. My name is Kei Izawa. I reside in beautiful Boulder, Colorado, in the United States. And I'm happy, very happy that Maya-san and Tim-san decided to interview me for my first book, Balance in Motion. Now I have finished writing my second book. The title of the book is The Victory Paradox. And I'm trying to finalize the subtitle of the book. But it talks about my personal experience from the 70s, 80s. Maybe many of you were not even born. But it was a transition. It is an experience that I had that there was a societal transformation about the perception of Japan in the late 70s and early 80s. Japan was suddenly viewed as the invincible economy and became very strong, started to go overseas and buy some major properties, golf courses, and famous buildings in New York and so forth. And many people started to feel that Japan was growing too fast, like China was a few years ago. Now, it was at that time that I received an offer to move from my semi-governmental job, JETRO, into General Motors to participate in the joint venture negotiations between, at the time, number one maker of automobiles, General Motors, and Toyota Motors of Japan. Toyota wasn't the number one at that time. And the feeling is that since that time, the early 80s, many people talk about Japan has had about 30 years, 3 decades of the lost 30 years of the Japanese economy. So I could see a transition of the perception in the marketplace that suddenly Japan lost it all. Is it so? I don't think so, but one of the things that the people take a look at is very superficial. And when you talk about the activities of major companies investing overseas and going this and that, and Japan was very aggressive, that's compared to today, that Japan seems to be somewhat in the backside, uh, doing part supply. They are doing technical improvements and supplying componentry to many industries. So suddenly Japan's Hanayaka, the glorious portion, became very quiet. And many people say, I repeat again, the last 30 years of the Japanese economy. But I have to highlight that behind that feeling is a major misunderstanding
Mm.
that many people do not understand that Japan, it is true that the GDP hasn't grown, or Japan has, the income level has been very stagnant, and things have not gone very well for Japan. But when you look at many of the critical industries of Japan, of the world today, technology wise, Japan continues to have a phenomenal market share. And it's not in the brands, it's not the super powerful Sony, it's not the super powerful, even Nikon, Canon, the cameras have been taken over by cell phones. And many people say the cell phones are, when it comes to proportion of the photography taken by people, will occupy a much larger scale. But when you start thinking that even iPhone and many of the top brands cannot run without Japanese componentry,
Mhm.
the cameras in many of the cell phones are made in Japan. So the market share is very high, even for industrial machinery and other things. Japan is very high. So I started asking the question: what is in there that Japan has done over the last 30 years, and how do the Japanese differ from Western companies when it comes to, let's say, societal change, and which one is contributing for the global happiness and health and sustainability? So those are the questions that I had in mind, and it it took an interesting twist because I have been doing Aikido since 1969, and I I was the I did translate the biography of the founder of Aikido, Ueshiba Morihei, into English. Uh, the founder of Aikido said the following: "The essence of Aikido lies in harmonizing oneself with the movements of the universe and becoming one with the universe itself." So there was my question: is there something happening in Japan that is connected to this philosophy that the founder of Aikido had? So that was the introduction. And that is why I started to connect to the Japanese culture again. The previous book also, The Balancing Motion that I wrote, I don't talk only about technical issues of martial arts, how the techniques are performed. I connected to basically the Japanese culture, civilization, from wardrobe, the lifestyle, many of the walking habits, the shoes, and so again, I'm trying to connect the business world to the Japanese culture and to see how it fits and how can that help the foreign companies, the overseas companies, to learn from Japan.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm really happy to hear that because I don't want to jump and to make the connections too short. But when you talk about the Japanese and the civilization and the culture, I think that there is so much. Well, basically, let's say that all the success of Japan is well, the culture is the major factor of that, because we don't really understand when we come from the West. We do not understand well how the Japanese mindset works and how it is. But I think that there is also a wonderful book that was written by Richard Nisbet, and in that book he also talks about how in Japan. People see themselves as part of the whole, and they adjust themselves to the situation around them. And so they have this flexibility which allows them to succeed in situations, actually, not only by adjusting, but also by helping others do the same. And but in that book, Richard Nisbet talks only about culture, right? He doesn't talk about business. And I really like how you made the connection between the culture and business and leadership as well. Because there is another thing that I have noticed during living here and communicating with my Japanese family, my Japanese friends and colleagues, and also my friends and colleagues that coming from other parts of the world. And this is that in the Western line of thought, we perceive the quiet power, or we actually do not see the power when it is quiet.
Mhm.
So we like to see power which is obvious, as you mentioned, in the 70s and 80s years of the last century, right? So Japan was kind of loud, not in a bad way, but as you said, it was
Mhm.
obvious. So Japanese companies, they would buy assets overseas, and everybody would perceive them as those really, really great corporations, powerful corporations. And now that power has become quiet. And many people think that Japan is going downhill because of the GDP, the economy, and everything, right? And that's not the case. The power has become quiet. That's how I perceive it. But because in the West we're used to something that is more obvious and louder, I hear many people say, well, Japan is not going to survive the next decade, right?
Mhm.
And the Japanese economy is not going to survive at all if the Japanese government doesn't do this, or this. Japanese companies don't do this, or this. And I think that that perception, just as you said in the beginning, is kind of mistaken.
Yes, I I'm Japanese. I was born in Japan to Japanese parents. I was born in Fukuoka, and but I was raised in South America as a child. So even though my blood and everything is Japanese, I have been influenced by outside influences. And when I started, when I returned to Japan and I went through the whole process of re-Japanization, it was a phenomenal pain for me to reform my mind, which was more Latin in nature than Japanese. And I was always the nail that stuck out. So many people hit me down to its place. But uh, gradually I became like a typical Japanese, or not so Latin per se. I became much more, let's say, adjusting to the requirements of Japan. I think being in Japan forces you to align to the Japanese rules and customs. If you don't fit, it's a very difficult place to live. So, but when I was offered a job, I didn't jump because I was looking for another opportunity to grow. It was because I met an individual named Jack Smith, who was the chief negotiator with Toyota Motor Company. He was the one that interviewed me, and he was the one that eventually decided to hire me. And in speaking to him, he said to me that we need someone like you to help us understand, and it's going to be for the benefit of the US and Japanese relationship. So I felt that being uh, an element within the Japanese side, I could never have made the contribution as big, helping the two giants shake hands and start doing a new production facility in the United States, because the automotive exports to the US was problematic. Then I saw in Jack Smith someone like a good commander. He was a leader. And he wasn't like Japanese leaders that I had met until then. He was very inspiring. So I I felt under this man I could do many things, and I actually followed him when he moved to president of GM Canada. I participated in the joint venture negotiations with GM Canada and Suzuki Motor Company. And when he moved to Europe, I also moved to England. And it was one of the decisions that they made to send me to Japan to help restart the Opel brand in Japan. So this is one of the contrasts that I see in the book, a phenomenal commander. And I don't want to bring issues like war generals and admirals and this and that. But I think if you talk about Japanese generals, many had phenomenal influence, but none had the power that many American generals and admirals had. I think it's the positioning of the whole military going under them was phenomenal. So, but when you start looking at the traditional Japanese leadership, I don't know whether it's appropriate for me to describe it this way, but I would say that it's more like a gardener, someone that takes care of the garden so that it flourishes. You do many things to keep it. The garden has to blossom, and it's the gardener's job, quiet job, to help the garden grow. So I could start seeing that difference, that the commander in chief is phenomenal, but in order to get to the commander in chief, I should say mainly the American way of business is that people hop from position to position,
Mm-hmm.
looking for opportunities for higher title, higher positions, and power. In Japan, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it's more a community, uh, cooperative environment where the consensus is made who will rise in the ranks.
Yeah.
Everybody agrees, or maybe not everybody, but the majority of the people say, oh, he's in the right spot. So he being the leader is okay. The exceptions are the family enterprises, where the lineage of the family takes over. But even in those cases, the sons and daughters of the principal people are sent sometimes incognito to work among the regular staff so that they learn how real people have to work. So I could start seeing the difference of the two cultures, leadership that way.
Yes, yes, I have seen. I mean, every Japanese company I have worked for feels like a community. And I was just in these lines of thought once again in a community, as you say, everybody knows what they need to do so that that community works and everybody blossoms. So, and I have also noticed that even in Japan, of course, there is competition between individuals, but that competition between individuals, it never trumps the well, working together for the common good of the community, right? So, and I have also seen how people who do well helping that happen, the community prosper. When I say community, in this case, I mean the company, the team, or the division, or the department, right? So more often, these are the people who everybody agrees that need to proceed and go up the hierarchy in the company. And once again, I think this is one of the main differences, as you mentioned. So it's not like you jump from one place to another, right? From one position to another, and then you climb the corporate ladder. It's um, it's more it's slower in Japan. Let's say it takes longer to do that, but also it is smoother as well. And one thing for people who haven't worked here in Japan, I would say, if you allow me to add, of course, is that basically in Japan, once again, it takes longer, right, to go up in the hierarchy. But the company, many companies here, they still want their employees to get a general view of the company, how the company works, and how different divisions, how different departments work, so that when that person goes up, when that person is promoted, they already have this idea what needs to be done so that not only one team or one division advances, but the company as a whole does so. So, and then, of course, I wanted also to give you an example. I can see that what you said, Izawa sensei, also refers to the Japanese society as a whole and the Japanese government in a sense as well, because just several days ago I participated in a lunch, and it was just a lunch about talking about the current situation in Japan, politics, of course, but also the corporate situation. And then I heard the opinion that basically Japan does need, or the Japanese government and the Bank of Japan, they need to increase, the interest rate, because then that interest rate will help those, what do they call them, ghost companies, or the companies that do not perform well, they will have to basically leave the economy, right? They'll have to close down, and it will release labor, well, working hands in the market. And with the increase in the employment here, well, basically the general purchasing power of the population as a whole will go down, and this will help keep inflation in check. So, and then this is the so-called Phillips curve, right? This is the model that people call Phillips curve in economic studies. But I don't think this will ever happen in Japan because Japanese companies do not fire their employees and don't send them to the free market. From my experience, what I have seen here, if a company has to reduce their staff, they always find positions for those employees, either in the industry, in other companies, or in subsidiaries, or somewhere else. And the point I'm trying to make is that, again, it's not a zero sum game in Japan. So corporations and teams and the government as well, they're well aware that in order for the country and the society to be sustainable, they need to, as you said, to use your metaphor, they need to nurture the garden, every plant in that garden, so that garden can blossom. And
Well,
but
I think you are very correct. I see that you have observed, you have worked in a Japanese environment, and you have seen how people behave. When I was the head of Opel in Japan, we had a German technical advisor that was the link between Japan and Germany for technical issues. I don't think he did it anything bad, but for example, he was very senior individual, and he would suddenly notify me that he was going to take his 5-week holidays and suddenly disappear. And it was suddenly for us in the office, he had some people supporting him, but suddenly there was a void, a vacuum. Suddenly a key individual would disappear, but it was his right to take the holidays. It was an agreement that he felt uh, that it could be taken. I think it would be very difficult in a Japanese environment to suddenly say, I'm taking 5 weeks off for holidays. If you want to take holidays in Japan, I think it has to be done by you scratch my back, I scratch your back, helping each other, and you train other people, you notify them what the job uh, requirements are at the time, and then gradually there's nothing that is left in void vacuum, so that the customers are not impacted negatively. But this was an example that I think in Japan, the Japanese tend to work more as a community, as you were mentioning. And in the book, I naturally, I wasn't going to write a lot of case studies, but I took one of Fujifilm. And as we all know, that it's already more than 15 years since we stopped using films for cameras. Now we have small things, memory cards, where we can deposit 200 or 300 photographs, that before we had to use 12, 24, 36 films, and it was very expensive to do that. But in the film industry, the leader for a long time was the American company from Rochester, New York, Kodak.
mm,
I was actually offered the top position of Kodak in Japan because I was successful, and that's why I was interested. But when I spoke to them, they were more interested in getting involved in the four litigations that they had against Fujifilm,
Oh.
because Fujifilm already had a distribution network,
Mm.
and Kodak was interested in getting those access to distribution network uh, without much effort through lawyers. And so I picked up the Fujifilm industry because it's so phenomenal.
Mm.
Until 1999 or the year 2000, they were behind uh, Kodak. And in the year 2000 or so, they win against Kodak. They become the number one in market share for camera films. But we all know what happened immediately after that. Digital
Mm.
photography becomes the mainstream, and suddenly, uh, according to the Fujifilm corporate history, suddenly the business of the film side in 10 years becomes 10% of what they had in the year 2000. So, did they fire people? I think, yes, they did fire some. They had to restructure, but they consolidated, they created groups, they reevaluated what uh, assets they had internally. And amazingly, and I write in the book, The Victory Paradox, is that the new leader of Fujifilm decides to focus on the key strengths that the company had. One goes into medical equipment, others goes to cosmetics, and you have to say, cosmetics from Fujifilm?
Yeah.
How can that be? And it happens that the coating on the print paper for the photography needed to be using some chemicals to maintain oxidate to avoid oxidization of the photo, because with the sun
Mm.
exposure and things like that, the films would become yellowish. So they have the technology, and Fujifilm now is very strong in cosmetics in Japan.
Yes.
And apparently, they didn't change the name; they kept it. So, and they even created. They said one of our weakness is that we have become so inner focused, and we have to develop everything in house. So they start collaboration with other entities that they could use their own technology to achieve. So Fujifilm is a phenomenally strong company in Japan right now. So
Yes.
this is an example of uh, survival in a community mode. And it's obvious also in Kobe earthquake in 1995 and Tohoku earthquake in 2011, when the communities that suffered the most were the ones that gathered together to support each other. And from the records of many US forces in Japan that went to deliver uh, food and water and other things, they said that Japanese in Tohoku stood in line, orderly in line, and they asked the old people, the pregnant people to go, and the children in the front. So they all had the sense of gaman, which is uh, you bear the burden and you accept that others, you sacrifice yourself for others as well. So this is something that Japan has demonstrated in my mind. Are there
Ye-
any questions? Do
Yes,
people have?
yes, there are there are a couple of questions, and well, Peter Pan, somebody with the handle name on YouTube, Peter Pan says, Fujifilm, a major player in cosmetics. That's surprising, but yes, actually, they have a high-end cosmetic brand. I think it is called Asterlift. I'm sorry for this. Oh, I don't know what happens. Okay, anyway, but yes. It has been really well accepted by the Japanese public, I would say, and the general consumer as well, because it's very high quality. As yes, Izawa Sensei said, they basically use the technology they used for film coating, and now it is. All over Tokyo, they have their own shops. They also are sold in department stores here, and also I, I also wanted to read another question here from Harry Wright, and it will take us in a little bit different direction, but let's move in that direction. So he says, from an Aikido perspective, a throw fails when you rely on force instead of balance and timing. If we treat the bubble era as Japan's using force to accelerate success, what imbalance did that create after the crash? And did Japan then freeze its posture, resting on past wins instead of transferring responsibility and renewal to the bubble generation and beyond?
Whoa.
That's a long question, and I think yeah, it's a deep one.
Well, Aikido is that it's not that it's true that if you use force to achieve a technique, we need to use some force, but it's not a brutal force. So we need to use gyration, deviation, redirection. All of those require some type of force. You cannot do it without any force. So I think what the government of Takaichi Sanae, Prime Minister, is trying to do is to first redefine what are the high, low-hanging fruits with highest potential for Japan at the moment. And she's focusing on Japanese companies that have that technology. And for example, one of the issues that she's doing is that in Hokkaido or Osaka, they wanted to create a phenomenal solar panel collection scheme using Chinese products. And apparently, there were some Chinese companies behind that, and it wasn't very clear as to who was handling that. But on the other hand, Japan has developed a new, very thin film solar energy collection technology that is already available within Japan that the government didn't support. So I think there will be a strategic selection of what the technologies will be essentially needed for Japan. And I don't know how soon she will be able to push for the fusion technology, but recently in Fukuoka, they managed to use seawater reverse osmosis
Yeah.
to generate electric power. It's still not making a lot of money, but nevertheless, they are focusing on that. And it's a technology that wasn't developed, invented by the Japanese. It's more European. The Dutch and others were using that, from what I understand. But even though it was taking a lot of time and money, Japanese kept investing in that technology because they felt it's something that we have to leave it for the next generation, and it's going to be usable. Like all the Shinkansen network in 1964, Japan didn't need a bullet train at that time, but the investment cost of doing that was very phenomenal. Something that Europe has already started doing, and they are quite advanced. The US is still struggling.
Mm.
They cannot do it in California. They cannot do it in Texas. They're trying to do it in the East Coast,
Yeah,
but
I see a
they're
couple.
thinking about the money. Mm.
Right, and I think that this is also another difference. And once again, it's also cultural, but it transpires in business that Japan thinks in terms of decades and generations. And this is the strength of the country, I believe, because at the end of the day, as you said, in the 1960s, Japan didn't need the Shinkansen, but they already had the vision.
Mm.
And that vision, we can see the results of the vision right now and the investments. And those investments, some people may say, depending on the perspective, the point of view, they may say that, yeah, there has been too much investment and it is not justified. But I tend to think that, and it is once again thanks to living in Japan and working here, I tend to think that, in the short term, many investments seem to be unjustified. But when you look at them in, let's say, the term of 10 years or 15 or 20 years, even 50 years in the future, at the end of the day, you see the positive results. And this is something which, again, I don't want to, juxtaposition or whatever, to create this contrast between Japan and the West, but we cannot not recognize it, right? That
Mm.
basically here, the vision is much longer than in the West.
It is true that even Ishin no Kai, right now, they are thinking if there is an earthquake and Tokyo is devastated, we need to have the second
Second cap.
capital.
Mm,
And that is one of the things that they pursue. If you look at water management, you can see how much Japan has done to create vast water canals underground
yeah,
in the middle of Tokyo. And when you see those structures, you say, can you expect something like that happen in New York, for example? As the global warming goes and water level goes high, uh, I can foresee that the Dutch have done fantastic job in making sure that the I think the Dutch average is like 4 meters under sea level
mm,
already,
yeah, already. Yeah,
and they have managed to do that for a long time. But many countries don't have the initiative to do that,
yeah,
and Japan sometimes it feels it's very slow, and you get frustrated by the slowness. But it's because they want to build a consensus, and once the consensus is reached, everybody works to achieve that.
yeah.
And even if it costs money, they will do it.
Yeah, I have noticed also another here in Japan that we nowadays we see that there is a lot of trust lost between business and government, between the general population and government in many parts of the world. But I can say that in Japan, even though there are some signs of that happening, especially the trust in the LDP, the leading party, that it's not really that bad here. And then the trust between these three parts of society, let's say business, the population, and the government, is still very strong here. And I believe because of this trust relationship, it is easier for the Japanese government to come up with the vision that needs those all those years, and all those investments. And I would say, yes, the government leads, the business leads. It's more like again there a win-win relationship, right?
I agree with you. I think it's like in 1868, in the Meiji Restoration, the new Meiji government uh, made an assessment of the Japanese industrial condition, and they always had the fear that if Japan didn't do something, it would be colonized by the Western powers.
Right.
So from 1868 to 1895, Japan builds already an armada and fights against China, and in 1904 fights against Russia, 1904-5. And so this is something that was done because there was a clear vision as to where to go.
Yes.
And after the war, there was no clear direction except that the government bureaucracies led by MITI at that stage created some leading industries where to focus and this and that. But that, I think, got a little bit out of focus because many of the Japanese companies, manufacturing companies, had to move overseas, and MITI lost the direct control that they used to have. So it's not the same pre Plaza Agreement of 1985 that where MITI had such a strong control, but it's from the early 80s. I don't even have a count of how many Japanese uh, automotive plants are in the US and globally, but
Right.
a phenomenal number have gone overseas. So there was a vacuum of vision, leadership, and many of the small suppliers didn't know where to go because uh, production started overseas. They couldn't go overseas. And I think there was a lack of focus. And well, we had some corrupt politicians.
Yeah.
And it's only now that with Takaichi Sanae, Prime Minister, she's giving a clear direction, and uh, she has a new finance minister that is very powerful, fighting against the finance ministry. I am friends with the villain, Miyazawa Yoichi, who was Zeisei Chosa Kaicho.
Mm.
We studied together at Harvard, and we traveled together to other places. And I never knew that he became such a villain, but it's funny that Japan is suddenly trying to take the leadership, and it's not coming from the bureaucracy this time.
This
It's
time.
coming from the statesman, uh, Takaichi-san. Suddenly, I don't think she speaks English wonderfully, but when you see her going to the G20 or other places, she's communicating, she's accessing. It's so refreshing after Ishiba-san, as you can tell,
Yes.
right?
Right, yes, I agree. And I believe that once, I hope that she stays in power for as long
Mm.
as she needs, to initiate that process because yeah, she's got the vision. The thing is that she needs time to initiate the movement, right? But the thing is that also I believe that once that process is initiated, then the bureaucracy will follow. Because
Has
at
to
the
follow.
moment, yes,
Yes.
they will follow, because I can see that well, basically after the 80s or during the 80s, that's when the economy matured, right?
Mm.
And then in the initial stages of maturity, I think that it's a natural process. I'm not trying to, to justify anything, but this is how things are. Because when an economy grows and it grows exponentially, everybody's happy and so on. But when it matures and suddenly there is that loss of momentum, there is loss of direction, and then
Mm.
it takes some time to once again find the purpose of, or to find a new target and goals and a new purpose. And I think that Japan, again, during these 30 years, Japan actually restructured. The Japanese companies, they just restructured. They didn't go underwater, as
You're
many
right.
people,
You're
yeah,
right.
many
You're
people
right.
say. So
Mm.
this time was used for restructuring so that they can once again reposition themselves and become leaders in the future. And Harry, you're right. Yes, you're right. There is a third rise of Japan coming. I believe that it is coming. But Isawa Sensei, I also wonder. So Japan basically lost, and the companies, they really diversified a lot their production, right, during the 70s and 80s especially. And so many of them, they had to consolidate, they had to sold some of their businesses, and of course that is part of the restructuring. Then my question to you is now that, well, Japan also lost through that restructuring, it lost some of the core competencies like semiconductors, right? And also computers and so on. But it looks like there is, the next wave is coming. And I wonder what your thoughts about that next wave is, how Japan will regain those competencies and, of course, create new ones, as you mentioned. And how do you
I
see
think,
that process coming?
well, I don't think Japan has lost in the semiconductor business totally.
N-
The
yeah.
reason I say that is because Japan is basically supplying many of the machinery, chemicals, even the chemicals to clean, and many of the componentry that is used for semiconductor production uh, is made in Japan. And now the Japanese government, as you know, is investing quite rapidly to create another Japan version of the TSMC, and they are trying to target even higher. And it was announced only 2 days ago that they will target even more compact chip. Of course, not everything will be easy to achieve. There's still many challenges, and competition also will make progress. But the fact of the matter is that many of the componentry is made in Japan. The machinery and things like that is gives Japan a tremendous uh, advantage if Japan comes back in a focused way. And many of the companies that were competing against each other are beginning to uh, work together.
Mhm.
This is a very strange phenomena of Japanese that even when they are competing like crazy, when one of the competitors starts losing, then they try to find a way to incorporate some of their people,
Yes,
they try to help them
mm-hmm.
or integrate the supplier community. This is unique in Japan.
It is.
And it's not the quarterly agreements and you sell to the highest bidder and you get rid of and you make money and you are rich and that's it. I think the responsibility lies in how to protect the village. And I hope that succeeds. I don't think we are there yet, but the initial signals uh, indicate that Japan is coming back. So, as Takaichi-san, I think copying the MAGA cap, she says, Japan is back. We're back. So, no, we're not there yet. But that feeling is attracting the support of many of the young people in Japan.
Yeah.
So, with the popular support, I think she will be able to do many of the TV stations and the media people, the newspapers that were writing negatively, I think suddenly are being questioned. Why are you so negative about the the plans to make Japan prosper again?
Yes, I think that many people they just expect everything to happen overnight again.
Mm.
And I'm talking about foreign correspondents or let's say expatriates who are here in Japan because I hear it, almost on a weekly basis from somebody. Yeah, nothing is happening. Nothing's going on here. So this country is doomed. And it's really interesting because when I
No.
say no, it isn't, it's just it takes time because the Japanese they want to build the basis. They want to build the basis on which they can step and build upon, and this takes time. So it requires building consensus. It requires, of course, actually, well, planning as well, because it's not just the consensus, it's the planning stage, and so on and so on. And then very few people actually believe what I say, but that's fine because they have been in Japan just for a couple of years. So
I
I,
see. I
yes, go on. Yeah.
maybe people may think that way. From the outside, Japan looks very slow uh, in change. But I go to Japan every year, with the exception of the COVID time,
Hmm.
and see the transformation of the subway stations or the systems that are in place. Every time I go is advancing. And for example, Korea and China, I think, adopted the electronic payment much sooner than Japan, and Japan was so much cash. And now I go,
Yeah.
I was there only 10 days ago, and I was happy to have met you there. But when people go to the convenience stores, they're making payment with something that I don't know what they're using. So, and they have a big machine and I don't even know how to operate. I'm the stranger in Japan. So
Mm.
the changes takes place in Japan because they want to make sure that everybody is comfortable. They don't
Yes.
want to upset old people that don't have cell phones, don't have this and that. So Japan does that in a transition mode that takes a lot of time.
Yes, indeed, and they actually adopt only what works for for the majority of, let's say, the team, the companies, the population as well, right? So every change, every technological adaptation actually works for the people who use it. It's
Mm.
not like well, let's say the company adopts something, and then everybody's frustrated and says, "I cannot use it," right? So and that's why what you say is everything happens well slowly, but then it is made sure to work. And I also wanted to make uh,
Mhm.
just once again emphasize another point that you made, that here competitors in Japan actually work together. I worked for trade association for over a decade, and that association, well, the membership actually were companies that competed with each other. But then, in order to lift up the industry as a whole, they also had those monthly meetings when they would meet, they would discuss problems, and they would see what they could do to also lobby the government so that the industry could be updated and could keep in pace with well, the changes out of the country, right? So and they realized that even though they were competitors in their trade, also there was power in staying together and working together. And I
Mhm.
think that this is not a very common thing out of Japan. And once again, I believe that we can see how this community spirit transpires here, and how the communal good is more important than the individual's good.
Well,
So
I agree with you. I think one element that uh, Japan does very well is the spirit of Sampo Yoshi. The three elements are okay. So the seller, the buyer, and the society, they all benefit when you do business.
yeah.
It's not, I'm going to take advantage and I don't care about the customers. I don't care about the society. So you can see that Japan has taken steps for quite some time in what is CSR, corporate social responsibility, or the environmental society, social governance. And again, coming back a little bit to the new book, I would like to highlight because I have used a few companies, Japanese companies, as an example, like Kyocera being one of them. It's not only Fujifilm, but Kyocera, talking about the Sampoyoshi philosophy. And uh, Japan, I think, or as I think I mentioned to you during lunch, Suntory, because they benefit so much from the water, they think the quality of water is crucial. And to maintain good quality, they need to have good forests. And to have good forests, they decide to uh, donate a lot of their funds for environmental protection of the forests in Japan. So this is something that I'm not saying that the West doesn't have that, and the Japanese companies are so connected to nature, which is very strange, so to say. But we spoke a while back about the uh, kamidana or jinja within the companies, that people have their Shinto altars in Japanese companies, and they use that not to beg for mercy or support from the gods, but to coexist with the community and nature. So this is something that I think Japan will be able to work together with the CSR initiatives and ESG initiatives, or all these global directions are finally coming to the same conclusion that Japan had from the time of Sampo Yoshi, which is the Ome merchants from Shiga Prefecture. They had that philosophy from a long time ago. So if we if Japan can contribute along those lines, I hope management style, leadership also will transform. I didn't talk enough about leadership. I can talk to you a lot about leadership,
Mm.
but it is something that perhaps in the next, if we have another opportunity,
Yes,
I'll be happy to chat. And if there are other people that wish to join in the dialogue, we can have a 3 or 4 party
yes.
podcast.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful because we have just scratched the surface. And I
Mhm.
think that there is so much more to talk about Japan and also, of course, the industry here, the leadership as well. Because, yes, we went into a direction that is also very interesting about the economy, and also I believe this is Japan as a leader in the industry and different, or let's say, new industries as well. But I would love to continue this conversation. And Harry Wright, thank you very much. I'll just read the comment by Harry Wright because we are beyond the 1 hour mark and it's a working day here. So I want to let people, go to work. But let me read it. So Harry writes numbering based on history. So it is 3 plus 1. The first three changes were about expansion, expanding the state, Nara, expanding industry, Meiji, and expanding the economy after World War II. Technically, the fourth stage is about adaptation to contraction. Japan is the first modern superpower to face a shrinking population, and the world is watching to see how their culture adapts. Yes, this is
Mhm.
really a very shrewd observation, and thank you very much, Harry, for watching and sharing your thoughts with us. Also, Peter Pan, thank you very much for this. And we've got also um, listeners from Argentina.
Oh,
Yes, and yes, South America. We've got Daniel Horacio Quiroga. Sorry, I have, yes. He says, saludos desde San Juan, Argentina, Isawa sensei. And
ah,
the, yes, and also we've got somebody else who says, hola, acá desde Argentina, Mendoza, Vero. And yes, also the same person says un placer escuchar sobre el segundo libro de Kei Izawa sensei. So thank you very much for that. And yes, to everybody who watched us this morning, thank you so very much for being with us, for listening to Izawa sensei's insights. And we are going to continue this conversation. We are going to let you know when that will happen. Please come again and let's continue it. Also, as Izawa sensei said, if you're willing to participate in this conversation, let us know in advance and we can have one more person at a time so that we can keep the conversation going, not to, overload it. So let's do that. And again, Isao Sensei, thank you so very much for being with us today. And I hope that your cough recovers, you get better soon.
thank
And
you.
yes, we continue. And also, just one more thing. When do you expect your book to be on sale?
And the write up is finished. The workload is on me that I need to add photography and illustrations in the respective areas with some comments. So if I submit, probably may happen before the end of the year, if not early 2026. But
Yes,
um, I have traveled quite a lot recently, and I still have one short trip to New York in early December. I hope to finish before then.
Yes,
So
and then let's announce it once it is out. I guess that we can have another episode
okay,
and talk a little bit more, continue the conversation then. Yeah.
my
Okay,
pleasure.
great.
Thank
Thank you
thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much indeed. And to everybody, see you next time again. Thanks a lot. Have a great day
Uh,
and a
thank,
good reminder of the week.
thank you very much.